Okay, so it is time to go through our monthly wrap for July, or shall I say my monthly wrap for July. If you've buddy read along with me, let me know. This month, I have read 13 books, which I don't know if I've done before because I didn't check my past months, but I think that's a record for me. Um, and we'll get into all the details as to how and why soon enough. But first, let's take a look at the statistics. Starting off with the genres side of things. So as you can see there, I read a total of 13 books, sorry, that's a 5. I'm seeing this reversed, so I do apologize. 5 fantasies, 1 paranormal, 3... I can't read that word. Contemporary, sorry. 3 contemporaries, 1 mystery, 1 dystopian, 1 memoir, and 1 urban fantasy. As for the age groups, there are 6 YA, 5 adult, and 1 middle grade. And as far as the page counts are concerned, we have 0 tomes and a half. I don't even know why that's there. 1 tome, 10 half tomes, and 1 quarter tome, interestingly enough. For a total of 4,950 pages. What a tease. I wish I'd read 50 more pages, but anyway. 4,950 pages, which averages out to about 160 pages a day. As far as my star ratings are concerned, I had a really, really good month. So as you can see, I have 6 5-star rating, 6 5 stars, 5 4 stars, 1 3-star, 1 2-star, and goose egg 0 1 stars, which is really, really good, and I'm really happy about that. So let's jump right into things. First of all, starting off with the fact that I did DNF 1 book this month. Normally I go in chronological order, but with my DNFs, I like to get them out the way right away. So the book I DNF'd this month was this book, The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. This is the first book in the Lightbringer series. I just did not enjoy myself at all with this book. And I'm starting to realize that unless you have the magical author name of Brandon Sanderson, I don't enjoy adult fantasy for some reason. I'm more of a YA fantasy person, but who knows? Hopefully at some point I'll find an adult fantasy not by Brandon Sanderson that I do love. This book was filled with a ton of swearing and a graphic scene that I did not enjoy. The magic system really just wasn't intriguing me at all. And then at one point, the magic system also involved using urine. So that's a deal breaker for me, and I DNF'd this book pretty much right away after that. I was like, nope, I'm done. No, DNFing, I just can't. So that was a no for me. So goodbye to the Black Prism. So this book, so with my monthly wrap-ups these days, I put my books away, where they go onto the allotted section of my shelf. So this book, because it's DNF, will go into the DNF drawer, which is right down there. So I'm just going to quickly put this book in the DNF drawer, and I'll be right back. So in an interesting turn of events, my DNF drawer is full, and I couldn't fit the Black Prism in there, so it had to go in the drawer below that one. So I'm now creating my second DNF drawer. There you go. Hello and welcome. Alright, let's now get on to the books that I did read for the month of July. And the first book that I read was book 5 in the Mistborn series, Shadows of Self. So this has been, the Mistborn series has been a really interesting read for me. So the first era of Mistborn I really enjoyed, and you can see it's prominently displayed and advertised over here. I really enjoyed that first era, and that covers books 1, 2, and 3. The second era is books 4, 5, and 6, and I recently found out, and if you saw my reading vlog you would already know this, that book 6 is not the final book in the Mistborn series, so for now, era 2 is books 4, 5, and 6. I read book 4 2 months ago and planned on reading this book last month but didn't have time for it, so I put it on to this month's TBR. I carried it over. This book was good. So book 4 I didn't really enjoy so much. This book was an improvement. I don't remember what I gave it as a rating, so I'm just going to use my cheat sheet. Shadows of Self. Yep, 4 stars. So much better than what I gave the first book in the second era of Mistborn, book 4. So 4 stars for this book. I did enjoy it. I thought it was a massive improvement. And I'm now going to put this in my Sanderson bookshelf section. Okay, so that took a little bit to organize because these shelf sections are really small. They're small in width and in height. But I like that I have all the white books together, and I also wanted to separate the first era from the second era. So now we have the Final Empire, book 1, The Well of Ascension, book 2, Hero of Ages, book 3, First Era complete, Firefight separating the second era, Alloy of Law, and Shadows of Self. Now let's move on to the second book that I read in the month of July 2020, and that book was this one. Book 5 of the Vampire Academy series, Spiritbound. And I gave this book, I think I gave it 5 stars. I did, yes. 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a lot of fun. The reason why I'm not going into too much detail about the Vampire Academy series or the Mistborn series is because they're a part of a series. Anything that I say is really going to be a spoiler. I'm just going to say that there was a lot of character growth and I really enjoyed this book. I came off reading book 4, which was an utter disappointment for me. So I went into this book with a lot of anxiety and I ended up really enjoying myself. So I'm going to add this to the Vampire Academy section right behind me. And it now becomes the new display book. Okay, so the third book that I read in July of 2020 was a contemporary, Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. This book follows our protagonist, who is a girl who I don't remember her name, Juliet. Okay, so Juliet's mum has passed away and Juliet is going to visit her mum at her mum's grave site, and she writes letters to her mum. So she puts letters by her gravesite, which is really nice of her. I just think that's a really beautiful, touching thing to do, because I've never done that before. But yeah, kind of inspired me to maybe write some letters to people that have passed away for me. Anyway, so there is a boy who works at the gravesite. His name is Declan, and Declan's job is to mow the lawn around, or the grass around the gravestones, but before he can do that, he needs to remove all of the personal possessions and then mow and then put the stuff back so that nothing breaks. When he's moving the possessions, he sees the letter that Juliet wrote and he replies. Juliet is really ticked off about this, which is understandable, at least to begin with, but eventually they end up anonymously writing to each other and helping each other through a lot of grief. And this book was written really, really well. After just one book, I explicitly, I should say, trust Bridget Kemmerer. I don't know what I'm pointing to down there. There is her name. Trust Bridget Kemmerer. This was an emotional read, but it was done really, really well. It is a dual perspective, so we follow, in every first chapter we follow Juliet, and in every second chapter we follow Declan, or the other way around. It's been a while since I've read it. It's been a good 4 weeks, if not more. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I don't need to look at the rating because I know that I gave this book 5 stars. It was amazing. And I want to display this book, so I'm going to display it in my contemporary section. And there it is. I'm trying to build up a contemporary section over here. So that's what we have over there. So to the 4th book that I read this month, which was this book, The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This is, I believe, an adult mystery. I'm just going to find it. Yes, it was. An adult mystery by Stuart Turton. There we go. Love the cover, by the way. Love the American cover more, but still do love this cover. The whole staircase in the mansion. It's set in a mansion. So the premise of this book is that our protagonist, Aidan Bishop, wakes up in the exterior of a mansion, having no idea what he's doing there, nor no idea who he even is. Later on, he ends up finding out that he needs to solve a murder and that the day will keep repeating itself until he does. To add another twist to this mystery, every day that Aidan wakes up, he wakes up in the body of another person who is there at the mansion on the day of the murder. And I just loved this book from start to finish. The idea of trying to solve murder is one thing. The idea of the fact that he is trapped in this time loop until he solves the murder, another thing. And then the idea that every day he's going to wake up in the body of a different character who was there on the day that the person was killed. It was wonderful because there are advantages and disadvantages to each character that he wakes up in the body of, and the journey was just so good. I did not like the reveal, but I loved getting to the reveal so much. And normally the point of a mystery or a thriller really is the reveal at the end, but Stuart Turton knows how to write a good book, because I enjoyed myself up until the reveal, did not enjoy the reveal, but still walked away loving the book. And if you can do that for me, if you can have a reveal that I don't like, but I still walk away saying I really enjoyed myself with the book, that is saying a lot. Now, what did I give this? I gave it 4 stars, yeah, because I didn't like the reveal. I really didn't like it at all, so I had to take away a star in all fairness, but it was still worth 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. So, we're going to put this book away somewhere. I don't know where, but I'll tell you where it went in a moment. And it's going to go right here because I'm trying to make this section either just contemporary or contemporary and sci-fi, and this shelf section is going to be fantasies that aren't my top fantasies and everything else that doesn't fit into these categories, at least for now. I need more bookshelving space. But anyway, let's just keep moving on. The next book that I read in July was a book that I absolutely loved, and I definitely gave it 5 stars. Yes, I did. And it is called 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. So this is a book that, the premise of this book is that the guy on the main cover first of all, this book was adapted into a TV series, and the specific adaptation of the book created season 1 of this TV series that ended up having 4 series. So the guy you have here on the cover is the protagonist, the main character in the TV series. So his name is Clay Jensen. One day, Clay wakes up to find a box delivered outside his front door. He takes the box inside and opens it up to find audio tapes, and I believe he found 7 audio tapes in there, but each side of each audio tape is a number from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. He takes it down into his garage where his father has a stereo that plays audio cassette tapes, and on the first cassette tape right at the beginning, he hears the voice of Hannah Baker, who is the ghostly figure you see there. The reason why she is depicted as a ghostly figure on the cover is because Hannah Baker was a classmate of Clay Jensen's who killed herself 2 weeks beforehand. On the audio cassette, Hannah says, "Hi, it's Hannah Baker," and basically then goes on to say, there are 13 reasons why to every story, and there are 13 sides to every story, I should say, sorry, and 13 reasons why I killed myself. She then, for every side of each audio cassette, goes on to explain the reasons why she did kill herself. This series the TV series has been shrouded in a ton of controversy. The book did come first, like, the chicken or the egg, the book came first. But I just thought this book was really amazing and done really, really well. So I did some research after I finished reading the book, and Jay Asher originally planned to have a different ending to what he ended up having, but he changed it in the end, and I can see why he did. It is a very hard-hitting contemporary book, and I will say a trigger warning for teen sexual assault as well as teen suicide. So if any of that triggers you, then be warned going in. But otherwise, I feel like this is a book that everyone should read because it does shine a very glaring light onto this issue of teen suicide and things that happen to teenagers that are generally swept under the carpet. So I love this. I very much trust Jay Asher, and I wouldn't mind reading more of his books in the future. So this was a YA contemporary. I gave it 5 stars. And 13 Reasons Why is now over here. The next book that I read was another contemporary. So I ended up DNFing. Oh, okay. I'm just trying to work out how the order of all this. I ended up DNFing The Black Prism, as I said earlier, but I planned on reading The Black Prism over the course of 5 days, so I replaced it with 2 books. The first book that I replaced it with was this book. This, I believe it's an adult contemporary, but I'll just double check that. No, it's a YA. A YA contemporary called The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. So, if you didn't know, this book was written and then adapted into a film, a very famous film, starring Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, and Stanley Tucci, as well as Emily Blunt. So the book, as well as the film, follows our protagonist in the film, played by Anne Hathaway, whose name is Andy, Andrea Sachs, who prefers to be called Andy, who is hired as Miranda Priestley's personal assistant. Miranda Priestley is the CEO and editor of a fashion magazine called Runway, which is the most famous magazine in the US, and certainly it is very well known even around the world. Miranda Priestley is a very powerful woman, and the reason it's called The Devil Wears Prada is because Miranda Priestley is possibly the most devilish boss that you could ever work for, making impossible or improbable demands of her assistants each and every time she opens her mouth, and just, yeah, she's a nightmare to work for, really. So at one point, Andy even goes to ask her a question to clarify something that she's asked Andrea to do, and Miranda turned around and said, bore someone else with your questions, you know, like, she's very demanding. Another example is she asks Andrea to go and get a copy of Harry Potter for her children, and Andy says, okay, I'll just go down to Barnes & Noble and pick it up for you. And Miranda says, well, no, they want the new book. And Andrea realizes that the children, and Miranda wants for the children, the unpublished manuscripts. So, yeah, I mean, clearly this was written in a time when this final book, Harry Potter, I'm pointing up here to the yellow book there, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows had not been released yet. It is obviously now. And all these other impossible tasks. So there are some good things about this book. I really enjoyed the read. One of the things I loved the most about this read was, for me, the comedy of Miranda and all of her impossible tasks. I always look forward to seeing what she was going to ask Andrea and her second assistant, Emily, in the film adaptation played by Emily Blunt, to do. I just thought it was really amazing. So I gave it 5 stars. There is a sequel to this book called The Devil Returns, and I'm really looking forward to reading that. They've said that The Devil Returns will not be made into a film, but I love the book so much that I can't wait to read the second one. It won't be next month, but hopefully it will be soon. As I said, this was a YA contemporary, and I gave it 5 stars. And being a contemporary, it goes up here. Okay, so the second book that I replaced The Black Prism with was this pamphlet. So it is a pamphlet because it is less than 250 pages. 500 pages is a tome, 250 pages is a half tome, and anything less than 250 pages is considered to be a little pamphlet. This is a middle grade book called Rowan of Wren by Emily Rodda. So a little bit of background about this book. My mum actually purchased not this actual book, but the story Rowan of Wren for me when I was a little child, because growing up I always loved to read. I attempted to read this book growing up, not this one, but the one my mum bought me, growing up many times, and I always DNF'd it, and one day thought about this book, and the next day at my own bookstore, the one that I work at, I saw this and thought, oh my gosh, I should purchase it and read it and see what I think of it now as an adult. I do realise now why I DNF'd it. The first chapter of this book does not resonate with me at all. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I don't connect with it. I didn't find it to be interesting, but I pushed through and I'm really glad I did. This book follows Rowan and his tribe of Wren, who one day wake up to find the stream of water in the dam has been blocked and it's now dry, and they need to try and fix it. And so what ensues is a quest to the top of the mountain to try and fix these things, and along the way through this quest they have to solve these riddles to get to the top of the mountain. It was a really good book, and for a middle grade, there were consequences in this book, which I am not used to seeing consequences in a middle grade. So I loved that. I loved the riddles. While it was a questing / traveling trope, it was one that I did enjoy. I ended up giving it 3 stars. So there you go. Again, it is a middle grade fantasy by Emily Rodda. And it slides nice and easily over here in my fantasy and other works section. So the next book that I read in July 2020 was this book, Captive Prince by C.S. Picard. I'm trying to hold it in a way where you can see the author, C.S. Picard. This is an adult, how did we do this? Adult fantasy, but it is also an LGBTIQ plus book, and I want to highlight that. So this book, I went into this book thinking it was a male, as in two men romance, but I would not call this a romance at all. In fact, this book follows, the premise of this book is that it follows Damon, who ends up being a sex slave to a prince who lives in a kingdom, and he is treated really poorly throughout the entire book. It was a very hard book to read, considering that I went in thinking it was a romance, and it was... whoa, like, C.S. Picard. She's very graphic in this book. So because there was no trigger warning, I deducted a star from my rating, but still gave it a solid 4 stars because I think the book itself was good. I enjoyed the plot. I thought the characters of Damon and Wren, I think that's how you say it, his prince, the prince guy, I thought was really interesting. It ended on a funny note because the way that things were kind of flowing throughout the first 3 quarters, suddenly at the end, these two characters were acting very different at the end of the book. So I found that to be very surprising. I did like this book though overall, that's why I gave it 4 stars. I do plan on reviewing it, but I want to review the entire series because they're all short books. So I do not have book 2 on my August TBR, but hopefully I'll have it on my September TBR and we can go from there. I do recommend this book to anyone who wants to read an LGBTIQ+, who is not triggered by sexual assault. If you are triggered by sexual assault, I definitely recommend you don't read this book because it is extremely graphic. So I do want to give you that warning. But if you can handle that, then it's a pretty good book as far as watching the journey of these two separate characters. So there we go. Now, despite the fact that this book, Captive Prince, is a fantasy, because it's an LGBTIQ plus book, I do want to put it in a section that's different to fantasy, so that's why I've put that there. The next book that I read was a massive disappointment. In fact, it received the lowest rating that I gave to any book this month, and that was the 3rd book in the Hunger Games series, Mockingjay by Susan Collins. This book was a total and utter disaster, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, because there's no point in sitting here lying saying this was amazing, because it really wasn't. So I went into the original book, the first book in the Hunger Games series, The Hunger Games, knowing nothing about it at all. I'd never seen the film, I'd never heard anything about the premise, and walked away giving it 5 stars. I loved it so much. I went into book 2, Catching Fire, really excited because I expected to see something happen, but that something did not end up happening because of a plot twist. Then a plot twist occurred at the end of the 2nd book that pretty much all but ensured I was not going to like the 3rd book, but I thought I'll go in and see what Susan Collins does, and I did not like this book at all. I gave it 2 stars because there were a few brief shining moments, and so I wanted to give it more than 1 star, but I don't recommend this book at all. I'm sorry, but I don't, and I need to be honest. It was a disaster. I mean, Susan Collins, to me, captured lightning in a bottle in her 1st book, and she tried hard to catch it again for a 2nd time in her 2nd book, and then it's kind of like she just smashed the bottle and threw the shards in the bin and wrote this. And so, sorry about the glare. So I was really disappointed, and it's going to go up in my dystopian section up here with the other Hunger Games, but I was very disappointed with this book, and yeah, don't think I ever want to really read this one again. So that book has gone up there with the other Hunger Games book. The next book that I read in July 2020 could not have been any more different. This book is hated by a lot of people. The vast majority of people who have read this book don't like this book, but I absolutely loved it. It is the screenplay adaptation written into a bounded book version of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by J.K. Rowling, John Tiffany, and Jack Thorne. This is the 8th book in the Harry Potter series. Some people call it canon, some people don't call it canon, some say it's canon because it has J.K. Rowling's name on it, and some people say this book goes completely against canon and is it's written more like a fan fiction. Now, I completely agree with the fact that it's written more like a fan fiction, but I don't have an issue with fan fiction. In fact, I love fan fiction, so I enjoyed my read. I'm not going to sit here and debate whether or not this is canon or not, but I am going to say that I loved this book. So I went into this book after ignoring it for many, many, many years because it is a script. It is not an actual novel. It is written in script form. So I ignored it for many years. But I went into this, reading this book this month after the month before, in June, completing my complete Harry Potter series reread, and I wanted more Harry Potter. What did I get in this book? More Harry Potter. I walked away completely satisfied. There are some really wonderful nostalgic moments that take place in this book, and I really enjoyed my journey. So I'm not going to sit here and just jump on the bandwagon with everyone else because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to sit here and be honest with you guys. I loved this book, and I think if you're umming or ahhing about picking up Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, I would say pick it up and judge it for yourself. If you don't like it, that's totally fine, but hey, you might love it. I did. I don't know how many stars I ended up giving it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, yeah, because there were some things that I did not like about the film, but overall, for most of so the first 3 quarters kind of flowed in a really nice way, and I really enjoyed that. The final quarter of this book kind of just zings off in a completely different direction, and it just feels like we've taken way too sharp a turn. It felt like naturally the book should have finished at the 3-quarter mark, but to fill more pages, I suppose, or to make the play, because this was converted into a play, to make the play longer, they added more, and a whole nother quarter to the book that I just don't think they needed. But all in all, loved this book. 4 stars. Thought it was amazing. Oh wow, like a glove. It fits onto my Harry Potter shelf, but nothing else is going to fit there. Ooh, so sorry. But nothing else is going to fit there, which is fine because I've got the complete Harry Potter collection plus Cursed Child there now. So I'm very happy about that. Okay, the next book that I read in July 2020 was this book, From Scratch by Tembi Locke. Now, this is an adult memoir, and a little bit of background about this book. So, at some point, I think at the beginning actually, of July, my mother and I ended up deciding to create our own little book club, Mum and Me. It's not called that, but I'm just calling it that. So Mum and Me. And for our little book club, it's run differently to other kind of buddy read clubs. Instead of us reading the same book at the same time, my mother would read a book that I love and I would read a book that she loves, and we would talk about those 2 books. So I read From Scratch while my mother read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and then she DNF'd it after a chapter, which I'm really happy that she told me because I've now steered her into the direction of Divergent, another book that I love, and hopefully she is enjoying that one. But after a chapter, she just said it wasn't the book for her, and that's fine. I am fine with it. It's just a little bit sad because I love Harry Potter. It's like one of my children, so that's fine. It is what it is. Hopefully she does well with Divergent. For me, I read one of her favourites, From Scratch. This is a memoir that follows Tembi Locke. It is written by Tembi Locke, and the audiobook is narrated by Tembi Locke, so I read along with the audiobook and really had a great time listening to the actual author narrate this book. I thought was an amazing experience. So it follows her own selected memories, which is why it's called a memoir, because it's selected memories and not every single thing that's happened. And at the beginning of this book, Tembi goes away to Italy to do a school exchange program. While she's there, she meets a guy named Saro. They fall in love, they get married. Things happen along the way. This book is shrouded in Italian and Sicilian culture, and I really enjoyed my read because it made me more aware of Italian and Sicilian culture like never before. So I enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4 stars because The quote that Reese Witherspoon has on the cover is very misleading. I thought that this book was going to be a culinary fiction that included cooking and Tembi learning how to cook in Italy, but no, I'm going to quickly spoil that for a lot of you out there. This is not a cooking book at all. So there's a little bit of a discussion about food because Saro, her husband, was a chef, but it's the total amount of food chat would probably add to a total of 2 or 3 pages for the entire book, and that's pieced and parceled out throughout the book, so it's not a lot at all. But otherwise, I enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. Okay, so I'm really reorganising my bookshelf and reshuffling everything for now. From Scratch is going to go there. Half the time I'm going to cover it, and half the time you'll be able to see it. Let's keep going, because now we're getting to completion of series. So I am completely up to date now with the Mistborn series. This is the 3rd and, at the moment, final book in the Mistborn series, Era 2, book number 6 in total, The Bands of Mourning. This book was so amazing. So, book 4, the first book in the 2nd era, received a low rating for me because I did not enjoy it. Book 5 got 4 stars, book 6 got 5 stars. This was incredible from start to end, and one thing that I really appreciate about this minor spoiler is that this book is filled with a ton of nostalgia from the first era, so I really appreciate that because of how much I love the first era of Mistborn. So I gave this 5 stars. It is an adult fantasy, high fantasy with hard magic systems book by Brandon Sanderson, and now I am completely up to date with Mistborn. So no more Mistborn for me to read till the next book comes out, which will either be next year or the year after. And next month, so August, I'm going to be reading Skyward, and then in September I'm going to start my next adult Brandon Sanderson. So hang out for that, and I'll let you know what that will be very soon. But in the meantime, let's put this in the Sanderson section. Sanderson section. Alright, so that's the best that I can do with my Sanderson shelf for the moment. I'm gonna find a way to make this work eventually, even if I get another bookshelf. We'll see how we go. Anyway, the final book that I read in July was the final Vampire Academy book, Last Sacrifice. And I am so glad I left this till last because this was incredible. So my journey with Vampire Academy has been completely up and down. Book 1 received 3 stars, Book 2 received 3 stars, Book 3 received 5 stars, Book 4 received 3 stars, Book 5 received 5 stars. So I had no idea what I was going to get into with, what I was going to get with Book 6, but it was amazing from start to end. Every moment of this book was completely action-packed, and there was always something happening. There was no lull, or if there was a lull, it was over extremely quickly. It got a resounding 5 stars from me, and I'm going to do a review of this book and a wrap-up of all of the books in the Vampire Academy series very, very soon. And that's how I'm going to do Vampire Academy. Well, that's all we have. We are running out of time, so thank you very, very much for sticking with me through my monthly wrap-up for July of 2020. I hope you had a good reading month too. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'll speak to you again soon. Letting you guys go. Peace, blessings, and so much love. Mwah. Thank you for watching, and happy reading. Bye, guys. Bye.